DLIHE and welcome to this special interview with Professor Dr. Kaveri Gill, the principal of the Dalai Lama Institute for Higher Education. This interview marks the 3 month of Professor Dr. Kaveri Gill in the office, and for the audience, I would like to make it clear that all the questions are from the students of the Dalai Lama Institute. So the first question would be, what was your first impressions after joining the Dalai Lama Institute?
So thank you, Lakpala, and thank you very much to the Students' Council of DLIHE. Very dynamic you are. So my first impression of the institute was extremely beautiful, even more beautiful than I had heard, but somewhat quiet and remote, and a bit of a self-contained universe, which I was not expecting of a campus. So partly due to COVID, I think, and partly due to perhaps other reasons.
Okay, so since you have been in Delhi University and Cambridge University, what major difference are there between this college and the Dalai Lama Institute?
So first, Lakpala, to draw a distinction between Cambridge and Delhi University, right? So Cambridge University was coming up, as was Oxford and other universities of Europe, when the great Nalanda university in India was ransacked and burning. So we are talking about 800-900 years ago. So obviously the history of these institutions, so there the pinnacle of excellence, academic excellence and all kinds of excellence. So I think that was Cambridge. And Delhi University was more laid back, some of the happiest years of my life, because I did do my first BA from Delhi University. So to compare it to the Dalai Lama Institute for Higher Education, I think what's unique about this place is its mission, which is really to bridge the traditional and the modern. The traditional being, Tibetan identity in all its dimensions, language, culture, Buddhist philosophy, history, every aspect, with modern systems of education. So this is the first thing that's unique about this institution. The second is that Tibetan society, or Tibetans in exile to be more precise, this is an experiment in higher education. Whereas if you think of the huge and wonderful Tibetan children's village institutions of schools, training colleges for teachers, all of these, that was more at the school level. So I think this is the first foray of Tibetans into higher education, as Amala said very clearly on this trip. And of course, we have the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics, we have Sara College, we have CIHTS, which have different mandates in the sense that some of them do not have formal affiliation, IBD and Sara do not. CIHTS came up in a very formal and different context and is doing wonderful work. But I think what's unique about this institution is having these two aspects, I would say, is what is very striking for me.
Okay. And how was your experience and feeling for the last 3 months as a principal in this institute?
So my initial feeling was to be completely at home. I had anticipated this. I knew it was going to be a wholly Tibetan environment. And I have to say, belief in karma imprints, bhakcha, different lives. So after I had unpacked and, actually had a chance to reflect, because I was just non-stop on the go for my previous job, it suddenly struck me that I'm here. And so my instantaneous feeling was one of being at home, but at the same time was one of feeling that there's a lot to do. And in that sense, I was very cognizant that I have a limited amount of time here, and I need to take the campus more in the direction of a college, invigorate it, energize it. So that's my feeling 3 months on.
Okay. So since it's been almost 3 months as the principal, what changes you have brought about?
So the first thing I did was when I reached the campus, because it's one thing when you assess an institution from far. So being on the ground, my first thing was to observe all aspects, and to see what is working and what is not. And having done that, I then started to implement some changes. And I think if I have to set them out, they would fall under the category of academic, management, and administrative, though in the TCV system and even at DLIHE, like the principal and the village director, there is a bifurcation of duties. So the administrator is more with the registrar and administrator Geshe-la. So on this, so what did I see here? I think it's very important for a principal to be living on the campus. I think the presence creates a certain discipline. What I have already initiated is to flatten the management structure. I think that's more sort of, in tune with the times. And what it also does, it gives younger colleagues experience. And given my own age, also relatively younger, I would say, I want to be more accessible to students. I want to create that culture where we are finally accountable to students, because any higher education institution finally is made up of its students and faculties. So that is one thing I have already introduced. The second thing is to introduce performance evaluation for faculty and for the pedagogical teaching styles. This is something we routinely do in the modern systems, not only for probation teachers, but all teaching staff. And I think it creates a culture of, excellence and quality.
What are your future plans to make better things in the institute?
So I think my future plans is really to first strengthen the internal, because I feel this institution has huge potential. And one of the things I want to say is that, I am struck by its world-class infrastructure. Really world-class. Its buildings, its, auditorium hall, seminar hall, tiger hall, the different kinds of facilities, they truly are world-class. So I think we have huge potential. We are also based in the south of India, which is the seat for a lot of Tibetans in exile. I don't see why we can't become the next IBD or SARA for the south. And in that sense, I feel to strengthen the internal, then attract more Tibetan students, Himalayan region students, and even others, via systematic outreach and our reputation. Because the Tibetan community in exile is very small, and in general, the reputation effect of quality of education is something that is what really attracts students. I would also like to build more networks and connections with our, surrounds, because Bangalore has so many fine academic institutions, and there are very, very fine people and colleges and everything that we could connect to. And I also feel to perhaps strengthen and expand programs. I think Amala was very keen to reintroduce Mandarin, because His Holiness is very keen. So some of these things would be a key priority.
So what was your experience when you first met Amajitsun Pamela and the TCV president Kain Thutin Dorjela recently, and also meeting with all the staff and student council and the students of the institute?
So I think Amajitsun Pamela, of course, I have met her and interacted with her before, but I had never interacted as closely as I got to see her on this trip, which, as you all know, was a surprise visit. It was a wonderful surprise. I was told in the morning that you have 3 special guests waiting for you. And I think you, Tibetan Children's Village alumni, all of you have a much better sense of Amala. So for me, I think what really struck me is, the motto of TCV is Shen Pen, or others before self, right? Yes. And looking at Amala closely, she is 80 now. I got the real sense that without the real practice of Janchup Sem, it is impossible to look like her and have her type of energy. Like, I'm a good 30 years younger, I'm more than that, and I was a little feeling more tired. The second thing about her is, I think she's a real practitioner in a sense, and I say this because I tried to ask her some quick questions over lunch about the personal side of being His Holiness's sister. And one of the questions I asked her was, did she ever feel sentimental and nostalgic about their family home in Lhasa? Yapshi Taksar, I think it is. Because even somebody like me, this is a Tibetan photograph magazine called In Frame, and there's articles by the famous Tenzin Boysa on, the Lhasa, the homes. And His Holiness's family home is one of them, and looking at the pictures, I myself start feeling nostalgic. And Amala's response really was striking, because she related it to attachment, material attachment, and she said, the past is the past, and the future is yet to be, and it emerges out of causes and conditions, or guken, that we create now. So there's only really the present. And to hear this, of course, His Holiness and all is a different level of being we would expect. But I did not expect this level of actually applying the Dharma in your own life from Amala. The third thing, of course, is her practical nature and extremely sharp. So I organized 10-12 meetings because I thought this was a wonderful opportunity for the visiting team to meet all the staff and students and and for all of us to. So she has a very clear vision for the DLIHE, and her commitment to it is extremely clear, because to come down during COVID in a 12-hour journey, for the first time coming out of isolation that everyone has been in, especially elder people, I was really very touched and also learnt a lot, and also finally as a woman, I think extremely inspirational. So I think that was my meeting with her, and it has really given me a lot of renewed sort of energy, with a certain kind of a motivation to serve others. With Gen Dojila, the president of TCV, I learned a lot about TCV, about its structure. For example, having a principal and a village director, because it's a huge family. And the other thing that people may not know outside the Tibetan community, but this TCV is probably the largest project of the Tibetans in exile, and 50,000 children, more than that, have come out of this system. So 1 in 3 Tibetans in exile are alumni of this family of institutions. So that, I think, is a spectacular success in terms of schooling and education, and especially amongst the refugee community. So I really congratulate Amala and the TCV president and all others who made this possible. For Mrs. Somola, who's the General Secretary, I learned about budgeting. There was a lot of clarity there. And of course, Student Council was the first that I met when I joined the campus almost. And I'm very struck by your initiative, enthusiasm, dynamism, and we've just had our graduation. So, all of it, lot of it organized by the students themselves. I think that Tibetan students are really talented in multiple dimensions, and I'm really happy to be here and have a chance to interact with them. And finally, the staff, same. There's a lot of young, dynamic staff, and I think there's a lot that we can work with to take this institution to another level.
So, how important is the Dalai Lama Institute to you, and what are the reasons?
I think for me, it's just a project of love. And it is also a great honor, I feel, as a non-Tibetan. This I have been cognizant from the start when Amala invited me to assume this role. So I feel there's a lot of trust placed in me, and it is a great honor. And because the seeds of Tibet, as His Holiness calls the youth of Tibet, and they are the future of Tibet, and his closeness to this constituency and Amala's is obviously something that also drives me to take this institution, its place in my heart is also colored by these factors. I think, as I said before, that its affiliation to Bangalore University now, thanks to the former principal, Professor Genbi Seringla, her hard work, and those of others. Every institution builds on those who have gone before. We have that affiliation now. So I think, at a personal level, somebody who is interested in Nalanda Buddhist philosophy and who loves Tibetans, I don't want to see India lose either Tibetans or the Nalanda tradition. And that means really making the most of this institution, because I think from the side of His Holiness, Amala, the TCV family, they have set up everything possible that we could want in order to, achieve our goals. So now it's up to us as a collective DLIHE family whether we really use that potential or not.
So the last question would be, what are the improvements needed by the staff and the students of the institute, and also what are the things lacking in this institute?
I think the things that I would like to see more is, partly a historical kind of an accident. I would say that I find the institution perhaps, needs to go more in the direction of college and university higher education as opposed to school. That comes out of its genesis in a way, the TCV schools, and because a higher education institution is very different to school level. So I feel that, I would like to see more energy, invigoration of, intellectual activity even after teaching hours. I feel we ought to have film clubs, debate clubs, gauche, many things, you name it, and I'm ready to, support it. But I also feel that comes with a responsibility, and that is, as I shared before, that in Cambridge I was very struck that students excel at everything. They excel at work or study, and they excel at fun. And there's no distinction between the two. And I think it's a certain kind of a personality type. So I think even here for the staff and students, I would like to see more of, an expansion outwards and an invigoration that would serve us all well. Because I think that, perhaps at this point, it's a little bit laid back, and we perhaps looking a little bit from a small perspective and internally. And as I said, higher education imparts different skills, for example, critical thinking, for example, questioning, for example, a discussion of what is going on in the world. And I think those are the kinds of things where I would really hope to see that happen during my tenure. And I also look to learn. I hope while here, I sadly do not speak Tibetan. I wish I did, and I wish I could, have time to learn it. But the thing is that during my time here, I would really like to learn a lot about, many facets of the rich Tibetan culture that exists. And to that, I'm looking to staff and students here.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable time. And also, thank you for the viewers. That's all. Stay safe.
Thank you, Tuchina Kadinche.